right, Henry Harris, you've obviously been around with boxing here in the Houston area for quite some time. Your brother Roy was one of the preeminent pro fighters back in the 50s and 60s out of Houston. Tell us a little bit about how you and your brother got involved in boxing.
Well, when we were kids, my dad had the neighborhood. It was back before we had electricity, and we had a big flare, gas flare. We lived in the edge of the oil field. So right there on we had this big flare out in the yard, and that was like a street light. But nobody else had street lights because there was no electricity. So everybody come to our house on the weekends. One of the things we did was box. They'd have
Just for something to do.
Yeah, and I mean, of course, they brought, some of them were musicians, and they'd play guitars and fiddles and things, and some of them we'd play hide and seek and all the other games. But one of the things we'd do is box.
Was this up in Cut and Shoot, or where was this? Okay.
Out at Cut and Shoot, and we had the boys got pretty good at it. Especially my older brothers, Tobin and Roy. They had boxing in school there for a while in Conroe. And so when they did, they both won their weight divisions, and they would have like fight nights and stuff there at the high school also, and we had some of the top, a lot of the state champions and stuff. People, the Kagawa brothers, Henry and Benny Kagawa, and Danny Orsack, Felix Baker, all the guys that were good fighters back in those days, amateur fighters in the area, they were right there. You know, they would come up in Conroe and fight. It was one of the places that I remember watching some of those Harry Seaback and a bunch of the guys that were, like I say, they were the champions of the era. And so they were like my heroes when I was a child, watching all these guys. So later on, we just kept boxing out in the yard, got more progressive. My dad would take a Golden Gloves team down and win the Houston Golden Gloves or win the tournaments, the junior Olympic tournaments and things. And our kids just didn't have any like formal training. We just fought a lot. You put the gloves on us, and maybe we'd have a punching bag, maybe we wouldn't, but maybe we'd just fight so much that we'd get in shape. And so then as the years went by, it progressed, and we got better and better, and then in the 50s we got electricity finally.
And you had a pretty long amateur career yourself. Tell us a little bit about, I understand you fought Ali, or Clay, back when he was Clay.
Well, I fought Cassius Clay in the National Golden Gloves in 1960. I went representing Texas, and he was representing Louisville.
And what happened there?
Well, we went up on a train back in the days. We didn't fly for a drive. We went up on a train, and a friend of mine gave me a ride to Fort Worth, and we caught a train there and went to Chicago. Well, I got sick when my friend had a 55 Ford convertible, and it had the air leaked real bad when you had the top of it. Still was pretty, and I got sick on the way the thing. So I wound up, by the time we got up there on the train, I had pneumonia. And the doctor said, "You can't fight." And I said, "Well, I got to fight, because lose anyway if you don't fight in the tournament." So I fought, and I won the first round. After the first round, I got up for the second round. My legs were just tingling and numb, and I knew it was going to be a long fight. I just kind of stalked him the rest of the time. He danced, and I'd hurt him in the first round, so he didn't he wasn't very aggressive. He just stayed back and danced and boxed. And I thought he won the fight. Our people thought I'd won, but I didn't. I really thought he won the decision there. Now, I felt like if I'd been well, I probably could have won that fight. And that wound up being the only fight I ever really lost,
And then you did have one pro fight, you mentioned.
I did that so I could quit boxing, kind of. I fought on the card, because people would keep calling me, and then I'd go places, and then nobody would fight me. I couldn't get fights, and so I just really wanted to quit. So I fought a pro fight so I could say, "Oh, I can. I fought pro." And so then later on, I was living in Arkansas back in the early 80s or 1980 or something. They had a Tough Man was just getting started, and I was down in Texas. I was fixing to move back home, and I was short on money anyway, and I saw a deal that said Tough Man competition, they paid $2,000, and we was fight. Back then they had 2-minute rounds instead of 1-minute round. And I was thinking, wow, I need that $2,000. I entered that thing at 40, I was already past 40 years old, and I wound up winning it, but I got so tired. I felt so embarrassed because I thought I looked really bad, but I looked good enough to win, so I guess that's the main thing.
And now you got this ranch out there in Cut and Shoot, and you're training kids. You got Alfonso Lopez and Alicio Castaneda, and maybe some other guys. And how did that all come about that you ended up, sort of managing a new stable of guys?
Well, I built the gym when I moved to Huntsville. I built a new gym and on the farm, and I had my middle son, Trey Harris, was boxing. He wound up with a 15-0 career in professional boxing. And he was boxing, and we put the gym for him to train in mainly. But then the kids from the college, when they had the fight night, would come out there and train. And that's why Felix Ramirez was working with the college stuff and the boxing, and he'd bring the kids out. And then these kids kind of were outstanding, Alicio and Alfonso particularly. Alfonso won the state Golden Gloves in his 8th amateur fight, and then he wound up winning again the next year, and he won the state other tournaments. He was the finalist in the nationals in the amateur boxing championship. So I'm just thinking, I just worked with him in the gym, a little bit. So I told him if he wanted to pursue boxing, which I didn't recommend it, but if that's what he wanted to do, I'd be glad to help him. I'd help all I could, make sure, teach him what I could. And he's been the greatest student I've ever had. Alfonso he listens to everything I tell him. He works on it until he gets it right. He's a wonderful student for the sport.
And finally, you probably have a long answer to this, but how would you say that boxing has changed over the years, either in the way it's done or handled on the official level or by promoters or fighters? Or if you were to summarize that in your mind, what would you say?
Well, I think the biggest thing was that in the older days, they let people fight more. Now there's so much regular. Now there's always been the same bunch of, I don't know, there's a dark side of boxing, just like in most other sports. I mean, I watched the baseball games played, and I can't stand it because the umpires aren't fair. And I don't like anything unfair in any sport because those kids work so hard to get it right. And so we've all seen the fights where they kind of predetermine winners and stuff. I don't believe in that. I don't care how good you are or how popular you are, you ought to have the same deal. And just like a pitcher needs to be able to, if he's a young kid and it's his first time up, he shouldn't have to throw any better strike than a guy that's been pitching for, established reputation. I think it's the same thing in boxing. Whoever wins that fight ought to get the decision. And I don't know that it's any different because it's always kind of been that way. You know what I'm saying? Then people set that up. So I think they're more skilled in boxing, just like they're more skilled in other sports. People have got smarter about boxing and have more skills, and still then you go back and some other time you'll see the same stuff that people don't know what's going on. I feel sorry for a lot of these fighters because they don't have anybody in their corner that does his part, and I like for it to be I like for all the fighters to have an equal chance, but I see a lot of them in there and they don't have any help. They come back to the corner and they got to plan their own fight pretty much because what they're getting in the corner is not going to help them.
Well, we appreciate all you've done for boxing, and we look forward to many more years to come, and best of luck to you and your fighters as they progress in their pro careers.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate it.